welcome back to Kyle and Nick on Film, and we're still stuck in our time machine heading to 1991, where we were encountering the Rocketeer. This is, it's the time when Disney could have bullets, and they could have literally like sexuality kind of to their films, but not too much, because the comic book didn't have all that.
We didn't rehearse any of this intro, but this is funny that you bring up a time machine, because actually the Rocketeer I label as the last great 80s action movie.
Oh, see, and I label it as part of like a group of the throwbacks to the time period, like where they homage way too much of like that kind of like 40s and 50s sensibility.
Yeah, what we did in the 80s.
Fast talking high trousers,
Yeah.
Because you've got that film, and you've got like The Shadow, Dick Tracy, The Phantom. Like we could do a whole themed month on movies that were throwback movies to like the, hey, how you doing, man?
But this is, I'll explain why exactly this is, I believe this is actually the authentic last 80s action, empty escapism film.
Wow. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing this. So let's get these credits rolling on Kyle and Nick on Film. Rocketeer. Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from Goethe from Views.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast. In the late 80s and the early 80s, Daniel Stevens created The Rocketeer, influenced by Raiders of the Lost Ark and these pirates and serials from the 40s and 50s, and crafted what would be a pinup. That style and that influence would bleed into what the movie was trying to project, was this what we would definitionally call empty escapism. There's really nothing below the surface. It's just a lot of fun. There's definitely good writing to it, but there's no really depth to it. It's just a fun, feel-good popcorn movie. And this is actually one of the first I got to see in the theater, I think, twice. So
yeah, I think, maybe the only thing I could possibly think of as like a takeaway lesson is treat your girl right. That's really like
especially
Cliff
Jennifer
Secord. Exactly, of course. One of my early crushes, Jennifer Connelly.
She was made for this movie.
Exactly. Well, this is a transitionary period for her, because she's coming off, kind of the younger. This is one of her first like adult roles, if you will, and she's treated as an adult in this film. Especially when you see that sequence with W.C. Fields, where it's like I said, the blatant sexuality that's shown in a Disney movie is kind of crazy for the time period.
Yeah, we got to talk about the movie inside the movie, but yes, Jennifer Connelly, she definitely has that look that fits the time era. It's wonderful casted. Actually, that same kind of why she's probably casted in Dark City, because they use that in the Dark City, which is kind of like a dark noir. Cliff Secord is
Billy Campbell, who I know from the 4400, this like show that didn't really do that well on USA like a decade ago. I loved the show, and I was so excited to see he actually had a movie.
Yeah, which is clever writing, because obviously the Rocketeer is going to fly, so he has to be a little bit of the why would you be interested, why would you catch on the ability to fly right away? Well, he's a GB racer. If you didn't know what GB racing was, airplane racing, that you have two poles and they just go around in a circle on the airfield. But it was later banned because it was so dangerous.
Yeah.
And so that's what the homage is, the flashback of the GB racers with these gigantic GB planes.
Oh yeah, and it's interesting, you pick one of the more dangerous ways to be in the air, and then you elevate it by literally putting like nothing between this guy and the ground but a awkward looking bronze kind of helmet.
Yeah. So right away we already got I would consider like your typical 80s empty escapism beginning film, which is you get this very soft opening, which is very warm, but then you get your action, and then you get a lot of action, and then you settle it down, and then you get your action again. So
it's interesting too, because it's a very well structured film.
Yes.
In the first 15 minutes, you have every single one of your pieces on the board. And you're ready to play. You know who your villain is. You know who your hero is. You know who his lady is. You know who his friends are. Like, you have everything in place.
Why Bubblegum's fake one.
Exactly, yeah. and just like and the way that it pays to, I guess the time period was at Beesman gum.
Yeah.
It's even like that was considered a lucky gum for pilots.
That time,
and for
right?
the fact that it was able to kind of like swing into a different kind of pilot, if you will, like. If Iron Man was in the Captain America, the First Avenger, like that's basically what the Rocketeer ends up being. Yeah. I found like the overall joyfulness of the film very strong. Like the tone is very much in there with the escapism, like you said. Joe Johnston directed this film.
Yes,
it was one of his earlier projects, because he had worked on some of the Star Wars films and stuff like
before
that.
Before we recorded, we talked. This is the foundation for Captain America, right? First Avenger.
He had to have gotten that job based on this, because you could pinpoint like I almost wanted to line up the two movies and just watch them next to each other after a time, because there's just so much that's downset. Even to the point of him getting this rocket pad, the first thing he does is, how can I make money on this? How can I exploit this for getting my way in life instead of doing the right thing, which is exactly kind of how Captain America is exploited in that film. Is he's punching out Hitler and stuff like that. It's very obviously structured around that film, and I think that's why Joe Johnston was the perfect director for both.
Are we sure Spielberg didn't direct this? I'm sure if you watched it and didn't know who the director was, you could tell somebody. You could tell somebody this is Spielberg.
But of course, Johnston worked with Spielberg, and he worked with Lucas. He did the third Jurassic Park film, taking up after Spielberg left those two because he was entrusted to it. Yeah. In fact, on the second Jurassic Park, Spielberg said, "You can do the second one," and then he was like, "Well, I really want to do the second one. You can do the third one." And so he finally came through on that. So there is a relationship there.
There's a lot of fan artwork of Rocketeer teaming up with Indiana Jones. It fits kind of that universe a little bit. The antagonist is Timothy Dalton playing Neville Sinclair, which is kind of like Errol Flynn kind of a guy.
Yeah. Well, and there was rumors about Errol Flynn back when the comic was put together, that he may have been a secret spy during World War II. Yeah. And so, that's been debunked now, but, you can obviously see the villainous intrigue of the basis for that character. And I will say this, maybe a hot take, because I love James Bond. I think Timothy Dalton is better as a villain than he is as a hero any day of the week.
Right, because he's more villainous as a Bond. He's almost anti-hero.
He was more gritty. Yeah, I mean, he was, even as a Bond, he was not the most likable version of that character. But then you get him in this film, you get him in Hot Fuzz. He had a stint on the show Chuck back in the late 2000s. He's a great villain, this actor, and he has fun with it.
I know. It just kind of even though he's been doing a lot of good guy roles, and then he does this villainous, but he does it fits him like a glove. Yeah. I love the movie, inside the movie, because Errol Flynn, is famous for doing Robin Hood, and then kind of make fun of the Robin Hood and the whole superhero obvious of him making the film and the whole sword fighting and stuff like that. But the funny thing is, tell me your real identity, and all he does is take off his bandage, and everyone's like, oh, it's...
Well, it's interesting that in that sequence, he is hiding behind a mask. He's hiding who he is from the world. Yeah. He's a little bit more forthcoming with revealing it in the movie instead of the real-time thing. But I mean, it's probably one of the best sequences in the movie is filming that scene, because you get progression for everybody. You see how he's willing to literally let someone who made an honest mistake get fired from her potentially your big break role, even if it's as an extra. But yet he also sees that he can use her, and that's when he decides, now I'll have empathy.
A year after doing Goodfellas, Paul Sorvino is in this movie, and it's not really, obviously he's a boss, but it's not like what we see in Goodfellas from him. No, it's a little more of a shell, it's a little more cartoon, it's a little more comic. He's got a little more flair to him.
Well, and Paul Sorvino doesn't get to do fun roles very often. He doesn't really get to have fun and chew the scenery up. He does a really great job in this movie because he's got to be a villainous character. There's a lot of different subsets of villains in this film that are all kind of intersecting.
Stages. Right.
Yeah, and his has to be kind of important because they're bad guys. They are criminals, but they're also they respect America. And there's kind of that level where he's forced to make a choice of how he's going to stand as this thing comes together. It's really kind of it's a lot more nuanced of a character for a much larger than life character.
And since we're doing this very much homage and appreciation to aviation and flight and the early stages, of course you're going to put Howard Hughes in it.
Yep. I'm a big fan of Terry O'Quinn, so I was so excited. Yeah. I love seeing him in anything just because he's so notable for being on Lost, and it was his
But he does a very good job of Howard Hughes.
Yeah, he's been subtly percolating on great roles since the 80s. He was the first stepfather.
The stepfather, that's what we got. Yeah.
And so he's been kind of part of this for a long time, and it's just nice to see him show up, and I like that you have some actors playing real people, but then you have a Neville Sinclair who's a fake version of someone, or even Jenny Blake, the character played by Jennifer Connelly, was actually in the comic book written as a character named Betty Page, who is based on
you're gonna get a phone call from the lawyers.
Yeah. So you get that translation of a lot of these people are archetypes of or fake versions of them, but then you also have the Howard Hughes, who is literally a real person, and that kind of gives it a semblance of historical context, even though it's totally not real.
No, the horse would be like the model plane of Spruce Moose.
The Spruce Goose is like it's the silliest thing in the whole movie. But it did put a smile on my face.
Right. How do you escape out of this? Well, we'll just make a model of the Spruce Moose. Neville Sinclair's house. I've watched this many times. What the hell is the concept for this house?
It feels like he's living inside the cube from Hellraiser.
I know. It's like it doesn't. It's not very inviting.
Or it's like maybe one of the forgotten wings in Citizen Kane's home, like where it's just like he's collecting these like deadly artifacts. It's so out of place. I guess it is a real location they shot in, but it's very weird.
It's totally unforgettable. You're like, what is this?
But it's a real location that wouldn't work in a real movie. But it's because it's so outlandish that it fits an outlandish movie, and it's mind-boggling, but it's memorable.
So the next stage of nostalgia for flight is, of course, you got your GB racers, you got your powered rocket packs that people fantasize about, you got your Howard Hughes and this Bruce. The next one, of course, a Zeppelin.
Yep. Got to go straight Hindenburg with that finale.
They have a great foreshadowing of it in the reels and the tours and everything. Yeah, that was very fascinating. So I love the whole, it has to come together, and of course they do it at the Griffin Observatory in LA.
I don't think you can make a movie set in LA and not have a scene there.
Especially that time.
Law. Yeah.
So if you didn't know, if you're unfamiliar in where the Hollywood sign is, just a couple miles off, is called the Griffin Observatory. And I've actually been there. It's very easy to film something there because it's a one street that's gated.
Yeah.
So you can actually block off traffic very easily and film it there with no problem because there's no other way to get in there. But it has that very look and feel for exterior shots. I mean, they shot Rebel Without a Cause there.
I always think of the ending of Bowfinger. La La Land had some stuff there.
La La Land.
It's like, it's part of the world. In fact, I would say the Griffin Observatory is to cinephiles what the Hollywood sign is to everyone else. Like it is a part of the culture, but just like something that maybe only movie people really notice.
I know. I when I went up there, I ran right to where that scene in Rebel Without a Cause where James Dean was there. He just had to go to that exact same spot. Yeah. So it's very nostalgic film, an homage to probably a time that really wasn't. You know, we have that, like, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's kind of nostalgia for our time that just never really happened.
Never really occurred.
But it has grounded into some bits of real things.
Yeah, it's an idealized version of the past. And again, like, that's why I kind of place it with The Phantom and I place it with Indiana Jones and Dick Tracy, is because those time periods never really existed in the way that we remember them. No. And it's almost like, it's like a forced B movie with a Disney behind it. And that helps when you get things like the aged CG. Is it still feels like it's supposed to be a little aged. It looks great actually for being almost 30 years old now.
Yeah.
But it is aged, and it's almost like more welcoming because of that.
When I mentioned, of course, one of the successes of the story is you have the lone hero, but also needs an older guide played by our coach or whatever. We usually get that. I mean, Alan Arkin fits this perfectly.
Alan Arkin with hair and. That's not something I thought I'd ever see.
And this is after he did, I think, just the year after he did Edward Scissorhands.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah. But he looks so much like how they dressed up Stanley Tucci in Captain America: The First Avenger. Yeah. Like, it's just another one of those, I don't know if it's on purpose
just
or not.
Old curmudgeon.
Yeah, but Arkin does a great job. He doesn't usually get these kinds of roles. Like, I think at the time period he was getting a few of them, but like he's become kind of known for his grumpy old manishness.
Yeah.
But it's really fun to see him having fun with an environment in the same way that he did.
He's very famous for doing bad guys. But he did a movie where he was Inspector Clouseau. I think the title of the movie is Inspector Clouseau.
That's right.
He did his opportunity to do that. But after rewatching this, I give an homage to whoever it was, Alan Arkin's stuntman. How many times he had to fall down?
Oh yeah, that's true.
Over the couch when the rocket goes up. Here, whoever Alan Arkin's stuntman is, my God, you should get your pay and a half.
But it's nice to know that they treat him like he's kind of like, I mean, like the direction of the film is to treat him almost like he is kind of a bumbling fool, but he's not. He's really intelligent. He's smart, and he's able to provide something for Cliff, because Cliff is not inherently likable the whole movie. Like,
he's kind of fumbling
very flawed in how he, again, like maybe the main message of the movie, treat your girl right, is that he doesn't really respect what she does or what she's trying to accomplish, even though he is in himself trying to accomplish great things with his life. He doesn't see that he's not giving that same back to her.
No, he doesn't.
And that's where Arkin comes in with that little bit of like, you know, like you need to pay attention to what's important, to what you're going to lose.
Right.
And I think that's probably the only thing that really changes in Cliff with the rocket path.
So Cliff is kind of not really the smartest person in the world.
No.
He doesn't really. I've said he doesn't really have. Doesn't really have the foresight. He has hindsight. He thinks about that, but he doesn't have the foresight. Once he gets foresight, he interrupts the date, right?
Yeah.
And then he interrupts the movie. So even though once he captures, I need to do this, it's still a problem with him.
Yeah, and he's not very clean cut about it either. Nope. You know, the fact that he shows up with a bowl and it's got like a handwritten piece of note paper in it, he gives it to her and then he like spoons soup over it.
Right.
And I'm not really sure if that kind of stuff floats to the top. But
I just caught this too. I put in my notes. Why is Jenny Blake like tomato soup? She drinks it eats it like twice in this movie.
Well, she's Jenny Blake Campbell, so she's the other Campbell. I think that was probably something that was cut in the final.
But the soup at the diner and the soup at a fancy restaurant. But yeah, the other thing is that they have like caricatures of famous people. Like they go to the South Seas Club and then you see like Clark Gable and W.C. Fields, and you get this funny thing that he actually can call W.C. Fields Bill. I mean,
yeah, that's fair.
Very few people could probably call W.C. Fields Bill. But yeah, it's the whole encapsulating a nostalgia.
That's true. And that's a good sequence in that dinner scene because, again, just like at the filming the movie within the movie, we get to progress, our main characters in this moment. Yeah. We get Billy Campbell as Cliff, bumbling his way through trying to interrupt the date but not really ruin it. He's kind of like learning like I need to respect her and that's why I need to help her like in this situation. We also get Jenny having to differentiate between these two men in her life. Yeah. The potential past and the potential future. And then we also get Neville, who we see in the way that he treats the help, the guy who's taking care of him, his waiter, he treats him like garbage.
Yeah.
And you see exactly how he was going to treat Jenny before he realized he could use her.
Right, and I think Jenny and Alan Arkin's character are probably the smartest people in the movie.
They are. One exception. There is one exception to that. It's Jennifer Connelly at times gets treated as if she is
just another
the woman. She gets treated very womanly in this way. And there's even that moment when Neville's seducing her, and she knows that it's wrong, and she kind of like
he's lazy about it because he's citing lines to in movies. He's kind of lazy about it.
But the way that she goes about it is, I felt like she didn't seem to me like she was smart enough to get out of it. And throughout the entire film, she seems like she's smart enough to get out of these situations. And then she does some like kind of dumb things when she's in that situation. I'm sure we all make mistakes, but just it seems like a very odd like departure from that. Yeah. And it was kind of something that flawed her character for me because it would be really great to have a film that's a throwback to those old timey movies, but then treat your women like actual women.
The next step is because we said the levels of antagonist is you have to have your monster, right? Yep. You have a monster, and this is the very archetype German monster. They even have one, a big bully in Raiders of the Lost Ark, German. But this one, I think it's almost looks like a Dick Tracy character.
They pulled Paul Sorvino and they pulled Tiny Ron out of Dick Tracy and put them in this movie. Right. It's not that they don't fit, but it's just you're reminded of it because I think Dick Tracy was only a year prior to
this film coming out. Yeah.
And it was the same like production company. I think it was Touchstone this time, but it was Disney as the parent company for it. Yeah. And it's almost just more jarringly noticeable because it seems like it's pulled right out of there and placed in this movie. But they do both work pretty well.
And he's intentionally supposed to be borrowed from like Frankenstein's monster, which is made around that time. So it's very much like that.
And watching that character, this big lumbering muscle-bound guy, I'm sure today would have been Dave Bautista with a bunch of makeup on him, but watching him do that is very like, again, that there's a guy under makeup. I think it's obvious.
Everybody knows his makeup.
But that almost makes it more charming because it's a throwback to kind of the cheaper serials that you could get away with, where you see the strings on the guy when he's flying. It's almost more charming and endearing knowing that he's under a bunch of makeup.
So, like as I always say, like it's if you can pick it apart because it doesn't really make sense. Like he escapes out the window of the hospital. Like where did you go after that? Did you just jump off the building? But then they cut. So there's a lot of fun movie logic. that you can pick apart logically, like that's what, don't fill in the gaps.
Yeah.
But it's the fun of it.
And that's not easier. I think it's more accessible to make those mistakes.
Yeah.
If you do it in a film that's not trying to be serious.
Right.
I think the moment that you go for a serious angle, if you make a big noticeable plot hole, it takes you out of the film because you're emotionally invested.
Right.
Whereas in like this, I don't know if joy is the emotion that's being tested there, because I don't care when I'm having fun. You don't care as much about the problems because you're enjoying yourself. That's why enjoyment is so much more important than whether a movie's good or not. There are a lot of poorly made horror movies that I'm a huge fan of that I would give 5 out of 5 stars, because they're flawed, but I will enjoy them beginning to end. And that's what The Rocketeer is good at.
Yes. So, overall, it's a high recommendation. It's a lot of fun. I mean, obviously, there's not a lot of depth to it, but that sometimes we can enjoy a movie. This is a popcorn flick and enjoyment. A lot of what we call empty escapism.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, this film kind of being a predecessor to Captain America: The First Avenger.
Yeah, if you like Captain America: First Avenger, you're gonna like.
I think this is worth checking out. Yeah. Because it's got a lot of that heart to it, a lot of that feeling. And The First Avenger is probably the most surface level Captain America movie. It's not a fault on it, but like that is it's the most empty escapism you get. For that character. Everything else is a bit more dark and serious in the later films, and that's why Joe Johnston was such a great translation from one to the other. The Rocketeer is pure adrenaline fun, campy fun. I don't know if younger people today will enjoy it the same way that I would.
Right.
Just because there's a lot of those kind of in-jokes that maybe just fly over your head.
It's for people like my age or a little bit, or you're like 30 or older, and maybe you're in your 60s and 70s, appreciate the old Hollywood, that it kind of homage the whole Hollywood that never was, right?
Yeah, so I think, again, there's some level of enjoyment you can get as a younger person, and if you have kids, I think it's worth definitely checking out. It's on Disney Plus right now. The transfer is really good. It's a really well-transferred film on there, and since there hasn't been an actual home video release of this thing in at least 13 years, and it was a bare bones, like not a great looking presentation for the film, Disney Plus is the way to go to check this one out. So if you have that and you want some good escapism for your afternoon, I think this is definitely worthwhile checking out.
And it explains why he has a German Luger as a gun.
Yeah.
In the poster, because you're like, he's an American hero, but he's got a Luger? What the hell's going on?
Well, there's yeah.
We gotta watch the movie and figure that out, right?
That's the central mystery, man. I mean, so is when Neville Sinclair says he's not gonna miss he's gonna miss Hollywood, you're like, maybe he will, maybe he won't.
Right.
But overall, we enjoyed the film a lot. Now we want to know, what do you think about The Rocketeer from 1991? Let us know your comments down below. Did you love the movie? Did you hate the movie? Did you watch it based on our recommendation? Or are you coming here after having seen it for your 12th, 13th time? Yeah. We want to know your thoughts on it. Also, we would like your help in liking this video. You have no idea how much it helps us with YouTube algorithms and kind of getting the conversation out there more. Help yourself by clicking subscribe. That way you can get our new episodes hand-delivered to you every time they drop. You don't have to go looking for them. Because who wants to go looking for stuff on YouTube? There's so much stuff. Just let us come to you.
Yeah.
Another way that you can help support the channel is by checking out the Patreon. There's a link down in the description down there. We've got some really great things we're going to roll out here with Season 3 on the Patreon, and we're excited to share them with you. But the only way you'll be able to be a part of that is by joining it. Check out the link, patreon.com/KyleNickOnFilm. I'm done talking. Episode's over. I'm Kyle Goethe. You can find my film reviews on GoFilmReviews.com.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast. We'll catch you later.